The letter arrived on a Tuesday, and it shattered my world in 3 lines. Insufficient funds. Your college tuition payment has been declined. Contact the bursar's office immediately. I stood frozen in the cramped kitchen of our family's modest suburban home, the linoleum cold under my bare feet, staring at the words that erased 4 years of straight A's, late-night study sessions, and dreams of becoming a doctor. At 20, I was supposed to be packing for my sophomore year at UCLA, not grappling with the betrayal that my college fund. My future was gone. My hands trembled as I clutched the letter, the paper crumpling under my grip. My parents were at work, but my sister, Vanessa, was upstairs, probably preening in front of her mirror as usual. She was 2 years older, the golden child with a face like a magazine cover and a charm that could melt anyone's resolve. Except mine, not anymore. I stormed up the stairs, the letter my only weapon, and threw open her bedroom door. "Vanessa, what did you do?" I shouted, my voice breaking. She turned, her perfectly arched brows lifting in mock surprise, but the flicker in her eyes told me she knew exactly why I was there. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ellie," she said, her voice smooth as silk, brushing her long blonde hair with a casual flick, but I wasn't buying it. The bank statement I dug up from Mom's desk last night showed a withdrawal of $42,000, the exact amount I'd saved, penny by penny, from scholarships, part-time jobs, and Grandma's inheritance. It was gone, transferred to a clinic in Beverly Hills, the kind that promised life-changing transformations. Vanessa had been dropping hints for months about wanting a nose job, lip fillers, maybe even a chin implant, her big break for modeling, she called it. I just never thought she'd steal my future to pay for it. "Stop lying." I thrust the letter in her face, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "This says my tuition wasn't paid. The money's gone, Vanessa. Gone. And the bank shows it went to some fancy plastic surgeon. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Her face paled for a split second before she recovered, crossing her arms and leaning back against her vanity, the mirror reflecting her flawless complexion. "You're being dramatic," she said. "It's just money. You can take out loans or something. I needed this, Ellie. You don't get it. Beauty opens doors." I wanted to scream, to shake her until she understood what she'd done. That money wasn't just numbers in an account. It was my ticket out of this small town, my chance to escape the shadow of her perfection. I'd spent my whole life being the smart one, while Vanessa was the pretty one, the one Mom and Dad fawned over, the one who got new dresses while I got hand-me-downs. But this was a line I never thought she'd cross. I stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled, and called Mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice distracted. "Ellie, I'm in a meeting. They took my college fund, Mom. Vanessa used it for surgery." I blurted, tears burning my eyes. There was a long pause, too long, and then she sighed. "We'll talk when I get home," she said, and hung up. No shock, no outrage, just a tired dismissal. That's when I knew. They weren't just going to let this happen. They'd made it happen. When Mom and Dad got home that evening, the air in the living room was thick with tension. Vanessa sat on the couch, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. I stood by the window, arms crossed, the letter still crumpled in my hand. Dad cleared his throat, his usual signal for a family meeting, but his eyes avoided mine. "Ellie," he started, "we need to talk about priorities." "Priorities," I echoed, my voice sharp. "My education is the priority. That was my money." Mom cut in, her tone softer but no less infuriating. "Ellie, Vanessa's career is taking off. She got a call back for a major modeling agency, but they said she needed adjustments. We made a choice. Beauty matters more than school right now. You're smart. You'll figure it out." I felt like I'd been slapped. My parents, the people who cheered at my science fairs and pinned my report cards to the fridge, were telling me that Vanessa's face was worth more than my future. "Figure it out?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You let her steal my college fund, and you're acting like it's no big deal?" Vanessa rolled her eyes, muttering something about me being jealous, but I barely heard her over the roaring in my ears. This wasn't just about money, it was about value, about who they thought deserved a future. And it wasn't me. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of their betrayal crushing me. I could take out loans, sure, but the interest would haunt me for decades. I could defer a year, work full-time, scrape by, but every option felt like a surrender to their choice, to Vanessa's selfishness. Then a thought sparked, sharp and dangerous. I didn't have to accept this. I could fight back, not with screams or tears, but with something smarter, something that would make them all see what they'd done. By morning, I had a plan, not just to reclaim what was mine, but to make sure Vanessa and my parents understood the cost of their priorities. I started by digging deeper. The clinic's receipt, buried in Mom's email, listed Vanessa's procedures. Rhinoplasty, lip fillers, and a consultation for more. The total matched my fund exactly. But there was something else, a contract with the modeling agency and signed with a clause about image standards. Vanessa hadn't even secured the deal yet. She'd gambled my future on a maybe. I saved every document, every email, building a case like I was preparing for court. If they thought I'd just roll over, they were wrong. I wasn't just the smart one. I was the one who'd make them regret this. The next morning, I woke with a fire in my chest, the kind that burns away doubt and leaves only resolve. I wasn't going to let Vanessa's vanity or my parents' warped priorities define my future. But fighting a family isn't like fighting a stranger. You can't just walk away or throw punches. You have to be strategic, surgical, and I was ready to cut deep. I started at the bank. The teller, a kind woman named Mrs. Larson who'd known me since I was 10, frowned at the account records. "This is unusual, Ellie," she said, her glasses slipping down her nose. "The withdrawal was authorized by your parents, but it's your name on the account. You're legally entitled to contest it." Her words were a lifeline. I filed a formal dispute, my hands steady as I signed the forms, knowing this was only the first step. The bank would investigate, but it could take weeks, and I didn't have weeks. Tuition was due in 10 days. Back home, I avoided Vanessa's smug glances and Mom's attempts at small talk. Dad was worse. He kept talking about family sacrifices like I was the one being unreasonable. I needed more than a bank dispute. I needed leverage. That's when I remembered Aunt Claire, Mom's older sister, who'd always been the black sheep of the family. She was a lawyer, sharp as a tack, and had no patience for Vanessa's theatrics. She'd moved to San Francisco years ago, but we'd stayed close through emails and the occasional call. If anyone could help me, it was her. I called Claire that afternoon, spilling everything, the letter, the withdrawal, my parents' betrayal. Her voice was calm but steely, like she was already building a case in her head. "Ellie, this is theft, plain and simple," she said. "Your parents had no right to touch that money, even if they think they did. Send me everything you've got, bank statements, emails, the works. I'll draft a demand letter to your parents and the clinic." My heart lifted for the first time in days. Claire wasn't just family. She was a weapon. While Claire worked her legal magic, I turned to the modeling agency. Vanessa had bragged about her callback with Elite Visions, a mid-tier agency known for scouting fresh faces. I found their website and called their office, posing as a concerned friend. The receptionist was chatty, too chatty, and let slip that Vanessa's image adjustments were suggested by an agent, not required. The contract wasn't even guaranteed, just a foot in the door. I hung up, my blood boiling. Vanessa had sold my future for a chance, and my parents had co-signed it. I needed to hit closer to home. That evening, I confronted Mom and Dad again, this time with evidence. I laid out the bank statement, the clinic receipt, and a printout of the agency's contract terms. "You didn't just take my money," I said, my voice low but firm. "You lied to me. Vanessa doesn't even have a deal yet, and you let her gut my college fund for it." Mom's face crumpled, but Dad doubled down. "You're being selfish, Ellie," he said. "Vanessa's career could change our lives. You'll get to college eventually. Eventually, I snapped. I'm not some backup plan. That was my money, not yours to gamble on. Her face. Vanessa, who'd been lurking in the doorway, laughed. A sharp, cruel sound. You're just jealous, Ellie. You've always been jealous. I'm doing something big, and you can't handle it. Her words stung, but they also clarified something. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, about who got to matter in this family. I spent the next few days gathering more ammunition. Claire's demand letter arrived, addressed to Mom and Dad, threatening legal action if the funds weren't restored within a week. I left it on the kitchen table and signed, like a bomb waiting to go off. Meanwhile, I dug into the clinic's practices. A quick search on X revealed horror stories, botched surgeries, hidden fees, and patients left in debt. I printed out the worst reviews and slipped them under Vanessa's door. If she wanted to play dirty, I could too. By the weekend, the house was a war zone. Mom was crying constantly, Dad was shouting about family unity, and Vanessa was posting cryptic selfies on social media, hinting at her transformation. I stayed quiet, working in the shadows. Claire suggested I talk to the college's financial aid office, and I did, explaining the situation without breaking down. They offered a temporary deferral, but it came with a warning. If the tuition wasn't paid soon, I'd lose my spot. The clock was ticking and I was running out of time. But then I found something that changed everything. An email from the clinic, buried in Mom's spam folder, confirming a second surgery Vanessa had scheduled for next month. She wasn't done. She was planning to drain even more. I forwarded it to Claire, my hands shaking with rage. This wasn't just betrayal. It was greed, and I was done playing nice. The discovery of Vanessa's second surgery plan lit a fuse in me. She wasn't just content with stealing my college fund. She was already plotting to take more, as if my dreams were an endless well she could drain. I sat at my desk, the email glowing on my laptop screen, and felt a shift. Not just anger, but a cold, focused determination. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Claire was my first call. She's booked another procedure, I said, forwarding the email. They're not even pretending to care about me. Claire's voice was calm but laced with fury. This is reckless, she said. I'm amending the demand letter to include a cease and desist for any further withdrawals. And Ellie, we're not just going after the money, we're exposing the clinic's practices. Send me everything you've found. I did, including the X posts about botched surgeries and shady financing. Claire promised to contact a colleague who specialized in consumer fraud. The clinic wasn't going to walk away clean. At home, the tension was suffocating. Mom avoided me, her eyes red from crying, while Dad doubled down, lecturing me about supporting Vanessa's dreams. I didn't argue anymore. I just nodded and slipped away, saving my energy for the real fight. Vanessa, meanwhile, was basking in her new look, posting mirror selfies with captions like, "New me, new future." Every post was a knife in my gut, but it also fueled me. She thought she'd won, but I was just getting started. I decided to confront the modeling agency directly. Elite Visions had an office in downtown LA, and I took the bus there, my backpack stuffed with documents. The receptionist, the same one I'd spoken to on the phone, looked surprised when I walked in. "I'm here about Vanessa Carter," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need to speak to someone about her contract." A junior agent, a woman named Tara with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense vibe, agreed to meet me. I laid out the truth. Vanessa had used stolen funds, my college savings, for her surgeries, banking on a contract that wasn't even signed. Tara's expression hardened. "We don't condone that," she said. "The agency suggested minor enhancements, but we never demanded surgery. If she misrepresented that, it's a problem." She promised to review Vanessa's file and contact me. As I left, I felt a flicker of hope. If the agency dropped her, it would prove her big break was a lie, and my parents would have to face the consequences of their choice. Back home, I kept up the pressure. I printed out the cease and desist letter from Claire and handed it to Mom during dinner. "Read it," I said, my voice flat. "This is what happens when you let Vanessa steal from me." Mom's hands shook as she scanned the legal jargon, her face paling. Dad snatched it from her, his jaw tight. "You're dragging family business into court?" he demanded. "This is low, Ellie." I met his gaze unflinching. "No, Dad. What you did was low. I'm just taking back what's mine." Vanessa, predictably, threw a tantrum. "You're ruining everything," she screamed, slamming her phone down. "Why can't you just be happy for me?" I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "Happy? You stole my future, Vanessa. You don't get to play the victim." For the first time, I saw a crack in her confidence. A flash of fear in her eyes. She knew I wasn't backing down. Claire's colleague, a lawyer named Marcus, called me the next day. He'd reviewed the clinic's history and found a pattern. They targeted young women with promises of career-making transformations, often pushing unnecessary procedures and predatory loans. "We can file a complaint with the state medical board," he said. "And if your sister's surgeries were financed with your money, we can argue fraud." I agreed, my heart racing. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about stopping a system that preyed on vanity and desperation. I spent the next few days balancing school outreach and legal prep. The college extended my deferral, but only by a week. I worked late into the night, emailing professors, begging for scholarship leads, anything to keep my spot. Meanwhile, Claire and Marcus built a case, not just against my parents but against the clinic. They found 2 other women who'd been pressured into costly surgeries. Their stories eerily similar to Vanessa's. The net was closing, and I could feel it. By the end of the week, Tara from Elite Visions called. "Vanessa's callback is on hold," she said. "We're reviewing her application due to ethical concerns." I thanked her, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. Vanessa's dream was unraveling, and while part of me felt a pang of guilt, the larger part, the part that had spent years in her shadow, felt alive. This was my fight, and I was winning. The tide was turning, but it didn't feel like victory yet. Every night, I lay awake, replaying my parents' words, "Beauty matters more than school," and Vanessa's smug smile as she justified stealing my future. The legal battle was heating up, but so was the war at home. I needed to keep pushing to make them see the cost of their choices, not just for me but for themselves. Claire and Marcus were relentless. They filed the complaint with the state medical board, citing the clinic's predatory practices and linking my case to others. Marcus also sent a formal notice to my parents, demanding they repay the $42,000 or face a lawsuit. "We're not bluffing," Claire told me over the phone. "Your parents co-signed the withdrawal, so they're liable. And the clinic? They're in deep trouble." I felt a surge of gratitude for her, but also fear. What if this tore our family apart for good? At home, the atmosphere was toxic. Mom stopped cooking, leaving us to fend for ourselves with takeout and cereal. Dad's lectures turned into sullen silence, and Vanessa was a ghost, locking herself in her room or storming out to meet friends. I didn't care about her sulking. I was too busy working. I'd taken a second job at a coffee shop, pulling double shifts to save for tuition, but it wasn't enough. The college's deadline loomed, and every rejection from scholarship applications felt like a punch. Then came a breakthrough. Marcus called with news. The medical board was investigating the clinic, and they'd frozen all pending procedures, including Vanessa's second surgery. "They're under scrutiny now," he said. "If we can prove your money was used fraudulently, we can recover it." I asked how long it would take, and his pause told me everything. "Months, maybe longer," he admitted. My heart sank, but I thanked him and hung up, more determined than ever to find another way. I turned to social media, not for revenge but for exposure. Using an anonymous account, I posted on X about the clinic, sharing the reviews I'd found and tagging local news outlets. I didn't mention Vanessa or my family, just the facts. A shady clinic pushing unnecessary surgeries, draining savings and ruining lives. The post gained traction, retweeted by a consumer advocacy group. By the next morning, a reporter from a local station had messaged me, asking for an interview. I hesitated, going public could backfire, but Claire urged me on. "The truth is your power, Ellie," she said. "Use it." I met the reporter, a woman named Lena, at a cafe. I told her everything, keeping my family's names out but laying bare the clinic's tactics. She was sympathetic, promising to protect my identity while exposing the bigger story. "This could help a lot of people," she said, and I believed her. The story aired 2 days later, a 5-minute segment on the evening news. It didn't mention me directly, but it showed the clinic's glossy ads next to tearful interviews with other victims. I watched it alone in my room, my heart pounding. The clinic's phone lines were already flooded with complaints. At home, the fallout was immediate. Vanessa burst into my room, her face red with fury. "You did this, didn't you?" she screamed, holding up her phone, where the news segment was trending on X. "You're trying to ruin me." I stood my ground, my voice calm but sharp. "No, Vanessa. You ruined yourself when you stole my money. This is about consequences." She stormed out, but not before I saw the panic in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't in control. Mom and Dad were next. They'd seen the segment and Dad was livid. "You're airing our dirty laundry for the world to see?" he shouted. I didn't flinch. "I didn't mention you," I said. "But if you're ashamed, maybe you should have thought twice before giving my future to Vanessa." Mom started crying again, but this time, she didn't defend Vanessa. Instead, she whispered, "We didn't know it would go this far." It wasn't an apology, but it was a crack in their armor. The college deadline was 3 days away and I was still short. I called Lena, asking if she could connect me with any organizations helping scam victims. She introduced me to a nonprofit that offered emergency grants for students. I applied, pouring my heart into the essay, explaining how my family's betrayal had nearly derailed my dreams. It was raw, honest, and exhausting, but it felt like a step toward reclaiming my voice. By the end of the week, the clinic's reputation was crumbling. X was flooded with stories from other women, and the medical board announced a formal inquiry. Vanessa's modeling dreams were on life support. Elite Visions had officially dropped her, citing misalignment with our values. I didn't celebrate, but I didn't mourn either. This was justice, not revenge, and I was just getting started. The house felt like a battlefield, with silence as the loudest weapon. Mom barely spoke, Dad's anger had turned to brooding, and Vanessa was a shadow, slipping in and out like a ghost. I didn't have time to dwell on their guilt or mine. I was racing against the clock to save my future. The college deadline was 2 days away, and even with my coffee shop wages and a small scholarship I'd scraped together, I was still $10,000 short. Claire called with an update. The clinic had offered a settlement to avoid a lawsuit. They'd refund half the money, $21,000, if we dropped the fraud claim. It was tempting, but Claire was firm. "It's a low-ball offer," she said. "They're scared. We push harder, we could get it all." I trusted her, but the timeline was killing me. I needed money now, not in months. Still, I told her to reject it. Half wasn't enough. Not for what they'd taken, not for what I'd lost. The nonprofit grant application was my last hope. I checked my email obsessively, jumping at every notification. Late that night, it came. An approval for $12,000, enough to cover tuition and buy me time. I cried, not from sadness but from relief, the kind that washes over you when you realize you might actually survive. I called the college the next morning, securing my spot with a partial payment and a promise to cover the rest soon. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lifeline. At home, I decided to confront my parents one last time, not to fight, but to make them understand. I found them in the living room, Mom staring at her hands, Dad flipping through a newspaper he wasn't reading. "I got a grant," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going back to school. No thanks to you." Mom's head snapped up, her eyes wet. "Ellie, we're sorry," she whispered. Dad didn't look at me, but his shoulders slumped. "We thought we were helping Vanessa," he muttered. "We didn't think." "You didn't think about me," I cut in. "You chose her face over my future. And now her agency dropped her. The clinic's under investigation, and you're out of excuses." I didn't yell. I didn't need to. The truth was louder than any scream. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I'm not giving up," I said. "But you need to figure out what kind of parents you want to be." Vanessa was another story. She cornered me in the kitchen later, her makeup smudged from crying. "You happy now?" she spat. "My career's over. The clinics canceled my surgery, and everyone hates me." I looked at her, really looked, and saw not the glamorous sister I'd envied but a scared, desperate girl who'd gambled everything and lost. "I didn't do this to you," I said. "You did this when you took what wasn't yours. You still have time to fix it, Vanessa. But not with my money." The next day, the reporter, Lena, called with news. The clinic was facing multiple lawsuits, and the medical board had suspended their license pending a full investigation. My anonymous post on X had sparked a movement, with dozens of women coming forward. Lena wanted to do a follow-up story, this time naming me as the whistleblower. I hesitated, going public meant no turning back. But I agreed. If my story could help others, it was worth the risk. The college sent a confirmation email. My spot was secure, but I'd need to keep working to cover living expenses. I didn't care. Every shift at the coffee shop, every late-night study session, was a step toward my dream. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for myself, for the girl who'd been overlooked her whole life, and I was winning. Claire and Marcus kept the pressure on. They filed a civil suit against my parents. Not for revenge, but to recover the full $42,000. "It's not just about the money," Claire said. "It's about accountability." I agreed, but part of me ached at the thought of suing my own family. Still, I couldn't let their choices define me. I had to keep going, for the degree, for the future I'd always wanted. As the deadline passed, I packed my bags for UCLA, my heart a mix of pride and pain. Vanessa's room was quiet, her mirror covered with a sheet. Mom and Dad were talking again, but their voices were hushed, like they were afraid to break the fragile peace. I didn't know if we'd ever be a family again. Not the way we were. But I knew one thing. I wasn't invisible anymore, and I'd never let anyone make me feel that way again. Back at UCLA, the campus felt both familiar and foreign. The lecture halls, the bustling quad, the late-night library sessions. They were mine again, but they came at a cost I hadn't anticipated. Every step I took was haunted by the fight I'd left behind, the family I wasn't sure I'd ever fully reclaim. Still, I threw myself into my studies, acing my biology exams and volunteering at a free clinic, determined to prove I was more than the betrayal that had nearly broken me. Claire and Marcus kept me updated on the legal front. The clinic was crumbling under the weight of lawsuits and bad press. They'd offered a full refund to avoid a public trial, but Claire pushed for more, punitive damages to send a message. "This isn't just about you, Ellie," she said. "It's about stopping them from hurting anyone else." I agreed, but the money felt distant, abstract. What I needed was for my family to understand the damage they'd done. At home, things were shifting. Mom started texting me, small messages at first, "Hope you're eating well," or "Saw your old science fair trophy today." I responded politely but kept my distance. Dad was quieter, his texts limited to practical things like car insurance. Vanessa, though, was radio silent. I heard from a cousin that she'd moved out, crashing with a friend in LA, chasing modeling gigs that never materialized. Part of me felt sorry for her, but pity didn't erase the theft. The follow-up news story aired a month into the semester. Lena had kept her promise, framing me as a determined student who'd exposed a predatory clinic. My name was out there now, tied to a cause bigger than myself. Classmates stopped me in the halls, offering support or sharing their own stories of family drama. It was overwhelming but empowering. I wasn't alone anymore. The story also caught the eye of a scholarship foundation, which offered me a $5,000 grant for resilience in adversity. I cried when I got the email, not just for the money but for the recognition that I'd fought and won. Claire called with big news. The clinic had settled for $50,000, more than my original fund. The extra was for emotional distress, a term that felt both accurate and inadequate. The money would cover my tuition and then some, but it didn't heal the rift with my family. I wired the funds to UCLA, securing my degree, and put the rest in a new account, one my parents couldn't touch. Claire also dropped the suit against Mom and Dad, at my request. I wanted justice, not destruction. I went home for Thanksgiving, bracing for tension. Mom had cooked a full spread, her way of trying to mend things. Dad was quieter, his usual bluster gone. Vanessa showed up late, her face still flawless but her eyes hollow. She'd been dropped by every agency she'd approached, her new look tainted by the clinic scandal. We ate in near silence, the clink of forks louder than any conversation. After dinner, Mom pulled me aside. "We were wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "We thought we were giving Vanessa a chance, but we took yours." "I'm so sorry, Ellie." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know you are," I said, "but sorry doesn't fix it. You have to show me you mean it." She promised to try, and for the first time I believed her. Dad was harder to reach, but he hugged me before I left, a rare gesture that felt like a start. Vanessa, though, said nothing. As I packed to leave, I found a note slipped under my door. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it would hurt you this much." It was unsigned, but I knew her handwriting. I tucked it away, not ready to forgive but not ready to hate either. Back at school, I focused on the future. The clinic's collapse was national news now, with lawmakers pushing for tighter regulations. My story had sparked something, and I was proud, but I was also tired. The fight had taken everything. My trust, my energy, my sense of family. I started therapy through the campus health center, unpacking the anger and betrayal. It wasn't easy, but it helped me see that my worth wasn't tied to my parents' choices or Vanessa's beauty. By semester's end, I'd earned a research internship with a biology professor, a step toward med school. The Scholarship Foundation invited me to speak at their annual gala, a chance to share my story and inspire others. I said yes, not for fame but for closure. I was done being the invisible sister, the one who came second. I was Ellie, the fighter, the survivor, and I was building a future no one could take away. The gala was a blur of lights and applause, but standing on that stage, telling my story to a room full of strangers, felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. I spoke about the betrayal, the fight, and the strength I'd found in myself. I didn't mention Vanessa or my parents by name, but I didn't need to. The truth was in every word, raw and unfiltered. When I stepped down, a woman in her 50s, a donor, grabbed my hand and said, "You're going to change the world, Ellie." For the first time, I believed it. Back at UCLA, my life settled into a rhythm. Classes, the internship, late nights at the library. It was grueling, but it was mine. The $50,000 settlement had erased my financial worries, letting me focus on my goal. Med school, then a career saving lives. But the scars from my family lingered. Mom called weekly, her apologies growing more sincere. She'd started therapy, too, and was volunteering at a women's shelter trying to make amends. Dad was slower to change, but he sent a long email, admitting he'd been wrong to prioritize Vanessa. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Vanessa was the hardest. She'd moved back home, her modeling dreams dead. She got a job at a boutique, and from what Mom said, she was quieter, humbler. I didn't see her until spring break, when I went home for a weekend. She was waiting in the kitchen, her hair pulled back, no makeup hiding her vulnerability. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice small. I nodded, bracing myself. "I was wrong," she said, staring at the floor. "I thought beauty was everything, that it would make me enough. But I hurt you, and I can't take that back." Her eyes met mine, and I saw the sister I'd once idolized, not the rival I'd fought. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, "but I'm trying to be better." I didn't know what to say. Forgiveness felt like a weight I wasn't ready to lift, but I nodded. "Keep trying," I said. "That's all I can ask." The clinic's collapse became a case study in my ethics class, a reminder of how far my fight had reached. The medical board revoked their license, and new laws were proposed to protect patients from predatory practices. I was invited to testify at a state hearing, my voice joining others who'd been hurt. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about making sure no one else lost their future to a scalpel and a promise. My relationship with my family was a work in progress. Mom and I talked more, rebuilding trust one call at a time. Dad started asking about my classes, genuinely curious. Vanessa enrolled in community college, studying marketing, a small step toward a new path. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. I'd learned that family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's messy. By summer, I was preparing for my MCAT, my dream of med school closer than ever. The Scholarship Foundation offered me a mentorship role, helping other students navigate financial hardship. I said yes, knowing I could make a difference. The girl who'd once felt invisible was now a voice, a force, a survivor. Looking back, I realized the betrayal had broken me, but it also built me. I'd fought for my future, not just against Vanessa or my parents, but against a system that valued appearance over substance. I'd won not just the money but my sense of self. And as I walked across campus, the sun warm on my face, I knew one thing for certain. No one would ever take that away again.